All the 19 building committee order to order. Let's start with Pledge of Allegiance. Chris.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
But you could sit right between me.
Yeah, that's right. Sir.
Russ.
You can try out your steak.
Oh. Oh.
What?
We
Really?
could make
Been
that.
here, done that.
I know I could. To call a time.
Our guest speaker. Public comment. Do we have anything on?
I don't, Devin has it.
We
Devin?
do not have any attendees online.
Okay. Minutes, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the December 12th meeting.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion changes? None. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Correspondence, Kathy, got anything?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Okay, reports, F1 chair report. I'll just briefly say over the last couple of weeks, the subcommittees have been very busy. And we will be discussing what some of the subcommittees have done in the last couple of weeks. So to be continued in a few minutes. Town council, Joe.
We are starting our talks. We did go through our strategic plan last week, and still part of the strategic plan is the completion of the 1928 building.
Okay, we don't get kicked out.
Not yet.
Okay,
No eviction notice.
all right, excellent. F3, Chris, FHS.
I guess just continuing to reinforce that in our meeting, working Chris, the professional partners on both committees, continue to work together. I mean, the only substantive report I would say is we're on time and on schedule, so you will, looking forward to just working together with the site demolition, the site improvements and everything, but on time and on schedule with the high school project.
Teachers are doing a tour.
Yeah.
The end of this week.
Excellent. Architect report, review of the cost estimates from the January 8th meeting. So, Chris, you want to pick it up from there?
Sure, Peter, thank you. You have in front of you on this spreadsheet, it's a detailed breakdown that identifies in the far right-hand column, what the cost estimate was at pre-referendum time. And then the third column from the left, as you can see in the heading, the design development cost estimate, which is what we received back from the third-party estimator about a month ago, maybe a few weeks ago. And then the delta of the two in the middle. The second page is probably best to describe where we were and where we are. So at schematic design, our initial estimate came in at $16,597,919. This committee approved roughly $474,000 worth of VE items that were incorporated into our documents. So we knew we were slightly over the 16 million mark, but having just finished SDs, we would have opportunities at DD and CD to address any overages as they came up in those estimates. At the end of design development, we had the second cost estimate run by the third-party estimator, and those numbers came back at $16,542,763. So that's where we are based on our design documents as of last month's meeting. And looking at that, we knew we needed to address at least 540,000 in value engineering items. But in working with the VE subcommittee and the town leaders, we've identified $653,700 in VE items for consideration and approval, which would bring us our total budget down to $15,889,000 roughly. Part of the reason to try to shoot below the 16 million is to get back into the project generator costs. And in this, as you see here, this 110,000 is a not to exceed cost that would allow us to repurpose the existing high school generator, provide a new pad, new enclosure, new conduits and electrical hookups to serve the 1928 building, with hopes of, when that generator dies, having in the capital plan costs for, or budget for a new generator. So we need to do some legwork with our design team and Russ and the town to analyze that existing generator to ensure that we're not doing anything that is going to result in dollars unwisely spent, for lack of a better term. But this is where we ended up with the VE subcommittee, and I believe there's, the next item would be going into that list in more detail. So is this in the packet, Peter?
Yeah,
Oh,
the,
The VE list?
yeah, the BE list.
agenda item G2.
Yeah, it's G2, Chris.
In the backup there.
Who do you want to?
It's dated at the top, January 16th, agenda item G2.
Correct.
Okay. So this was the list developed in conjunction with the Value Engineering Subcommittee. And I will walk down each of these briefly, but please, if you have questions, let me know and we can go into more specifics. Item one was simply an error in the estimate that we identified as we went back and revisited with the estimator. He had included stone in an area where we were proposing metal. So he corrected that, and that resulted in a reduction in the estimate of $35,000. Item two is proposing to use a rubber sports floor in the multipurpose room in lieu of a wood athletic floor at a savings of $41,000. And rubber sports floors are typical for this type of use. They're often used in elementary school gymnasiums, sometimes even middle school gymnasiums. As we're not a regulation court, and we've heard from the rec department that this will be utilized mostly for the youth in Farmington, we felt that this was something that should be explored as a cost savings item.
What does that look like?
You can get different styles. It's traditionally a solid color, but it would have all the line striping on top of it as you would with a wood floor.
Oh,
It would look like West District.
oh, okay. Yep.
Item three is to eliminate exterior seating walls near the front entrance. As part of the current design, we had concrete and masonry seating walls built into the plaza design, and we're proposing to eliminate those and instead use fixed metal or wood benches that would result in a cost savings of $57,000. And that's actually how the previous renderings that we looked at did not have the masonry seating walls. They had those benches that we're proposing as part of the VE items. Item four, we were showing 3 flagpoles at the front entrance, and we were actually directed before this VE subcommittee meeting to reduce that to 2. So that would result in a savings of $5,000 by eliminating one of the flagpoles. Item 5 is to reduce the amount of ceramic tile in our new toilet rooms. Currently, our design calls for ceramic tile on all 4 walls of the new toilet rooms going from floor to ceiling. What we're proposing is to run ceramic tile only on the wet walls. So that would be the walls that have sinks or water closets. And this savings of $14,400 assumes a full height ceramic tile on that wall, but we could also go to a wainscot, like a 4 or 5 foot height ceramic tile on that wall if desired. Or, it might add another $1,000 or $2,000 to the savings. Item 6 is to leave the existing chimney in lieu of demolishing. Right now, our documents call to demolish that tall chimney that's outside of the existing boiler room. And the side benefit to this is we have heard that there are environmental concerns due to the species of birds living in that chimney, that this would need to be demolished at a certain time and go through some regulations to be done. So I think this might be a win-win, at least from that perspective.
Yeah, they're chimney swifts, I believe. Swifts that the DEP has informed us migrate and live in that chimney. We have received notice that we could demolish it, but it has to be at a certain time outside of their migratory period. So we're all for saving the chimney.
Chimney stays.
I am speaking for myself.
Chris, I have a question I forgot to ask last week. Have you guys looked at the structure of that chimney and it's okay and it's not gonna fall down?
We will take a deeper dive at
Yeah.
that, but it does not appear that it's
No.
going to fall down. But any like repointing or repair work, we'll make sure is included
Yeah.
in our documents. But it looked good
Yeah.
from the photos we have. Yes.
And does that continuing to remain, have any downstream effects on the structure of the building?
No, it actually probably simplifies things because we're keeping it as is. If you've been out there, it's that chimney extends to the basement and it's part of that areaway where there's this exterior stair that leads down there. So by keeping everything intact, it simplifies the construction of that area. It would probably actually result in more than $10,000 of savings, in my opinion, but that was the number identified by the estimator. Item 7, we're proposing acoustical treatment within the multipurpose room to help with the echo reverberation. The estimate carried $34,000 in acoustical treatment. And we believe that we could reduce that by roughly half and still accomplish what we need to in that space. Item 8 is eliminate vinyl wall coverings in the conference rooms. If you recall at our, or I'm sorry, that may have been the VE subcommittee meeting. We were looking at an accent wall in all of the conference spaces.
You're finished.
That would either be an accent paint or a vinyl wall covering. If we choose the accent paint, it's a savings of $23,000 by doing that across all the conference rooms in the 1928 building. Item 9 was to eliminate the reconstruction of the porticos on the east and west exits. So these are the split level exits that come out the sides of the 1928 building, out of the existing stairways. One facing east as you drive towards the 1928 building is visible. It has an awning shed roof that's asphalt shingle. On the opposite side, it's actually, that doorway is interior to the building because the 1960s or 70s edition was built right up to it. So we're going to need to reconstruct something. Our current documents proposed reconstructing to its historic nature based on the photographs we had. And we saw this as an opportunity for cost savings, and you have 2 images in front of you that look like this, which you're all seeing for the first time tonight. This image with the shed roof. So the shed roof is more or less as it exists today. And we are proposing we could keep that roof. We could increase the depth of the fascia, which is the wood trim surrounding it. And we could add brackets that reflect the original design of this building. We have the original documents, and I don't know, Devin, if you had that to pull up. On the elevations of the 1928 original drawings, they had shed dormer roofs that looked like this. They were slate originally, but they had this style bracket, which we could replicate to create a historic appearance that's true to the building without going through the full reconstruction of that portico that you see in this photo. So that portico includes, essentially building a roof that projects off the building with a tablature and columns attached to the building, as well as freestanding columns, and then a very detailed stair with side walls versus what you're seeing here, a concrete stair with metal handrails. The second image is to take that historic appearance that you see in the photo and simplify it by, rather than extending the portico and building columns beyond the face of the building, this is really just doing entablature with the columns attached to the building. So it would reduce the size and the cost of that reconstruction to capture the savings that we're showing in this value engineering estimate. And to that, we have an opportunity here, as we're suggesting, to keep the reconstruction, as you see in that photo, as an add alternate in the final design, so that if funds are available, we can reconstruct it the way it originally appeared. And then the fallback alternative would be one of these two options, whichever the building committee prefers. And we can discuss that now, or we could discuss that later.
Why don't we discuss it later when
Okay.
we come to the motion on that, because I got a couple of questions on it.
Sure. Item 10 was to remove some aluminum doors that we had shown coming out of the multipurpose gymnasium and other secondary exits out of the building, and to provide instead hollow metal steel painted doors. And this achieves not only cost savings, but improved security. The aluminum doors have glass in them, and as secondary exits, we really wanted these to be solid doors. So this seemed like a good solution. Item 11 is a little more complex in that currently we know we need to do extensive repairs around this 1928 building. If we're just looking at the exterior walls from grade up to the roof line, the current estimate accounts for roughly $600,000 in restoration of those exterior walls. We went through this in detail with the estimator, looking at photographs. He came out to the building to review it, and we both agreed that that number was a bit too conservative, and we could likely reduce it by the $150,000 you see here without impacting the finished appearance of this building. And then item 12 is our hopes based on educated estimates of what we will be able to reduce from the abatement scope versus what's currently shown in the DD estimate, which again happens to be around $600,000 currently for abatement in the estimate. Based on the testing report that was done by the high school environmental engineer and the estimates they provided, we have a high level of confidence that we'll be able to reduce that significantly, and felt that the $150,000 is a number that we will be able to achieve. Hopefully it'll be more. Fingers crossed it won't be less, but we do recognize that there will be some significant cost savings once we have our environmental engineer come back into the building, test the elements and materials that were not previously tested, and then provide a full abatement scope and estimate based on our project scope. So all that included, those are the estimated hard construction costs. Comes out to $573,400. We would apply the same contingencies, escalation, general contractor fees, and insurance at 14% that is applied to every hard construction cost in the estimate, for a potential savings of $653,700. So I know that was more detail than I anticipated, but I wanted to make sure everybody understood not only what we were proposing, but the rationale behind it. And again, this was reviewed in detail with the subcommittee.
Excellent. We'll be discussing this in another couple of ways. All right, thank you, Chris. Pat, Jean and Dan, the communication subcommittee report, I would presume after this meeting, we're gonna really start to ramp things up in terms of communication.
The thought is that after this meeting, if all goes well, the committee will meet, and at the February meeting, we'll have a finalized newsletter draft then for the committee, the full committee to approve at the February meeting, which would be the next meeting.
So you'll call her.
That's fine.
You now and then?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, Jean, it would be at our normal time, which is right before
Yeah.
this one, but before the February meeting. So 3:30, we were meeting
In February?
yeah,
We'll do the 3:30 before that meeting.
correct.
And I believe
Yep, we'll
it's-
send an email.
We'll send an email, but you'll also get a draft beforehand so that you guys can work on it before.
Tell me that date again, please.
It's gonna be February 13th.
3:30 instead of 4:30.
Okay.
Okay, F7, Chris, you want to pick up on the interior design and finishes subcommittee?
Yes. In front of you, this is the packet with our logo in the gray cover sheet. That's Devin's pulling up. Again, this was thoroughly discussed with the interior subcommittee. And what you have in front of you are the selections that were made during that meeting. And so what we are proposing for the new building. So we'll start with the lobby design, which is page 1. The renderings on the left have not been updated. Those were what was presented at the interior subcommittee meeting, but we will be updating these based on the selections made, which are to the right-hand side of the page, which included the wall tile that's leading into the multipurpose room is that dark gray porcelain wall tile. The porcelain floor tile and base below that is a bit of a lighter gray. And we are showing a lay down mat, which is the rectangle overlaid over that lighter gray porcelain floor. That lay down mat would be as you come through the interior vestibule into the lobby. The vestibule itself would be covered in a walk-off mat, which is a heavy-duty carpet, and that's in the middle at the bottom of your sheet, labeled vestibule walk-off mat. The paint colors would be really the same paint colors as this room. The accent paint behind you all on the wall will be used throughout the building in the corridors and the lobby. And then the cream color or the antique white on the wood is being proposed at the reception desk. And then we have a general wall paint that's in that same family of a light gray. For signage on the right-hand side of this sheet, we're showing wayfinding signage that would be located at every level, typically outside of the elevator or in high traffic circulation spaces such as the lobby. So this would depict which floor you're on, as well as where the primary departments within the building are located. And room signs were also selected. I think that might have been covered up by another image here, so I apologize for that. But we did select a style for the individual room signs as well. The town seal was discussed, and the preference was to locate that on the reception desk in the middle, similar to the way it's done on this council podium. And then there will be doors are going to be natural wood veneer throughout the building, with exception of the gymnasium doors that you see in the rendering, which will be gray to match the porcelain wall tile. Going back to the few I missed here, solid surface counters at the reception desk, which is the same material as the countertop in front of us, but it would be in that gray stone look that you see. And then lettering above the gymnasium door would be in gunmetal gray. Any questions on that?
Seal was gunmetal too, correct?
I'm sorry?
The seal, wasn't that gonna be?
Yeah.
I could go back to my notes. Do you recall if it was bronze or?
Yeah,
Said-
what's
you
that?
wrote-
Isn't that a
That one's
casting?
bronze.
You wrote gunmetal on there.
Did I? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's written right there. So
So it's gunmetal.
that's the right answer.
Yeah,
I didn't
good
see
answer.
that.
Yeah,
To the
me
right.
either.
Just one quick question. It's gonna be in gunmetal, so how do they fabricate that? Is that? I say you find the guy who did this. Okay, well, we won't beat that to death right now.
All right. On the next page, this is the primary corridor on all three levels. First, the flooring, which is below the rendering you see. We're proposing LVT, which is a luxury vinyl tile. It's low maintenance. It doesn't need waxing. And we're proposing two colors, a darker band as a border around the perimeter, and then a lighter color in the field throughout the middle of the corridor. The walls are wainscot design with the Farmington red behind you at the bottom. A red chair rail that matches, and then the same warm gray that we're using in the lobby above that.
How is the floor clean? How do you maintain the floor?
They would just mop it, wet mop it,
And that's it?
correct, or sweep it.
Does it show scuffs and other discoloration at all from people dragging their shoes and other things?
It can be scuffed. I've seen it more if you have like furniture that you're dragging across, but from shoe traffic, no, this holds up very, very well. But it is a vinyl product, so if you drag a metal across it, it can damage it.
If it had to be replaced, do we have sufficient replacement tiles on hand to be able to blend them in if we had to remove it?
We include attic stock in all items like this, as well as ceiling tiles, carpet tiles, so that if there's any damage, you'll have that on hand.
Okay, thank you.
There's one brick wall on the first floor that's just outside the multi-purpose room. It would be on the recreation side of the floor plan, if you recall where the rec department was, that we're proposing to leave as natural brick. And here's actually where the room signs showed up. They shifted pages. I apologize for that. So the photo with the 224 in the upper right-hand corner is what we're proposing for all individual room signs. And then below that is another level indicator in each corridor designating the level as you come in and out of the stairs. The stair walls at each end, you can see it in the very, very back of the rendering, would be a full accent wall in the Farmington red color. And again, doors are being proposed as natural wood with red frames in these areas. Moving on, the next page is an enlargement of that rendering. But then I'll move on to what is page 4 of these graphics. And this is the classroom studio that's located adjacent to the multipurpose room. This is also being proposed as an LVT. Yeah, sorry, it's the
No,
one with the red stripes on it.
Stapler.
Yeah, it's
Staples on the wrong side.
It's totally throwing the bell.
Yeah.
It's just me.
Sorry.
No,
No, it's.
It's all of it. Don't worry, team. It's everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Just look at this screen. That's what I've been doing.
The
That's a
floor,
good
the
idea.
floor in the classroom studio would be an LVT with some accent colors. And then on the walls, we are proposing on the wall that is facing the gym, that would be a mirrored wall with a portable dance bar that could be used. And then on the wall that's backing up to the corridor, which is the bottom of this plan, we're proposing acoustical wall treatment on that wall because this is This is a room that's going to have volume in it based on the activities, sound volume, and a lot of hard surfaces. So we're utilizing that acoustic wall treatment to help absorb a lot of that sound. The next page is the new toilet rooms. So on the first floor, outside of the multi-purpose area and adjacent to the rec offices, we have two brand new toilet rooms. So we have the luxury of providing new finishes in there. This was all proposed before we went through the VE exercise, so it's a different design. And this is something we need to reinvestigate in terms of the wall tile, because previously we were showing a solid blue wall behind the fixtures on the wet walls that then dispersed into a white or off-white wall for the other three primary walls. Since we only have wall tile on one wall, we may likely just propose a solid color on that wall. And if you have any preference, blue versus the off-white, we can certainly take that into consideration. For the floor itself, it's a darker floor tile that you see option 1. Kind of in the middle of your page. To the left of that, the partitions are the toilet partitions, so in between the actual water closets. And then the solid surface is the countertop for the sinks. So it would be a full counter with some inlaid sinks and sensored faucets. I think you don't actually flip the page, turn it over. On the second and third floor, we have toilet rooms that currently exist. They are already fully tiled. However, due to repairs over the years, the tile is in good condition, but it's mismatched. What we're proposing is a product we've used in a lot of renovations recently, which is a glazing paint, sort of like an epoxy paint that will cover those tiles, refresh them, and make them uniform in appearance. And here we're proposing, again, on that wet wall behind all the fixtures, to use a blue glaze, and then the other 3 walls would be an off-white or gray product to keep in line with the finishes in the lower or first floor toilet rooms. We're also applying a similar epoxy that would have the speckle flakes that you see in the bottom left-hand corner over the floor. And so that would be a combination, sort of those two images that you're seeing, a darker gray epoxy with different colored flecks or speckles.
Could you remind me what bathroom people will use in the evening when they're there?
In the evening, they'll use the first floor bathroom, which are the new finishes versus the restored finishes we're looking at now.
So the restored finishes didn't come out with a value engineering, and so the new finish, the new bathroom is the only one that had just changes.
Correct.
To the tile layout.
We're almost through. Next to the conference room and training rooms. So you can see the carpet that has been selected. It's mostly a field gray with some blue accents and some lighter tone accents. And then the paint would be in line with what we're doing in other spaces. In this case, a blue accent wall with the general gray paint on the other 3 locations. And then the rendering depicts also what we're proposing for light fixtures in these spaces. Those, I'm not sure how to describe them, the tripod looking fixtures, three-legged fixtures. And this would be in the same style of the training room as well, utilizing that carpet. And then the last page would be the office spaces, which follow in suit of a general off-white paint. We are proposing 3 different accent paints that would vary as you go through the different levels of the building. So in each department, they would have one or multiple walls, depending on how it's laid out in one of these accent paints, but that accent paint would be consistent based on the level of the building that you're on. The carpet, we're looking at some alternatives based on the feedback we got at the subcommittee meeting. So I'll have samples of that at our next subcommittee or building committee meeting. And then one item we wanted to confirm, the built-in desks in these areas. I believe the subcommittee had instructed us to use an off-white wood or laminate, similar to what we're doing in the reception, that would look like these antique white wood painted items. But I wanted to confirm that versus having a natural wood tone on those desks.
I
Could you
think we
bring-
Did, right?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't
conversation.
know that we talked about it. I think, what do the desks look like?
They're
There's
all,
more like the count, right, like in Besser's, you walk in and there's like a reception like
right,
counter.
or you walk into the tax collector, not into the tax collector, but they would have a desk out front. The town clerk or
It's like a
assessor.
Yeah,
counter.
like the
Yeah,
counter. top.
It's a reception counter, for lack of a better term, in each department, and the style varies depending on the department and their needs, but it's a welcoming transaction counter.
Oh,
And I think we were gonna make it consistent with what the reception was and
Right,
something along what was
Right,
here
right,
too,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
That's- Yeah, I just got confused by the word desk.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, it's not so much
I
a
thought it was
desk.
desk.
Yeah.
It's more of a counter.
Counter.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a bad terminology. Thank you.
Is there seating provide for people who come in where you might have in the town clerk's office, 6 people at any one time coming in to meet on a matter, or the tax collector where people can sit? Or are we going to be congested in those offices?
We provided a waiting area and seating area based on, yes, each department's feedback of how many folks they anticipate needing to be able to sit for a period of time. So yes, that's included in each department.
So as an example, for the town clerk's office, it handles everything from passports to land records to birth to marriage, you name it. How many, because I can't see it here, how many seats are in the waiting area for the town clerk?
I believe there we had 3 or 4 seats inside the actual office. And then we had discussed the possibility of including benches down that main corridor for any overflow or for people waiting at the tax collector, since you can't go into that office. So it's going to be a combination likely of loose or mobile seats in the office and then benches outside at that first floor, which is where you have your primary public services.
Okay, thank you.
The one recommendation I would make for cost purposes with these reception areas is at the lobby reception, that will be a natural wood. But I would recommend a laminate in this color at each of the individual department offices, just due to the cost differential. If we did go with a natural wood, it would be significantly more.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about the face of it.
The face of it.
There, the red is in there too, correct, or not?
No, the red
It's on
appears
the-
only in the lobbies and the
And on
corridors.
others, Yeah,
And then once you get into the office spaces or the toilet rooms, the blue accent wall is utilized in those areas.
well, that'll work with that.
And that is everything.
Excellent. Okay, F8, Kathy, financial report.
We just have 2 new items, and those are the legal notices that we did for $338 and change, and $338 and $317. And that was for our commissioning services and for professional engineering services.
All right, we're into new business. G1, a motion for an invoice for Silver and Petroselli.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. G2, I need a motion to approve the list of VE considerations.
Motion. Second.
Third.
Fourth.
Fourth, okay. Any discussion on this? This is the first list that Chris went over.
Peter?
Yes.
One thing I thought would be helpful, if that was helpful for me too, is that, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, so this is the second time we've done, or it's the first time we've gone through it, the design, right? Or the second time? And now they're gonna go through it again, and we're gonna have another opportunity.
Right.
So that's one,
Design.
for the design, yeah, so we're gonna do the same process again, so Chris is, so he's gonna, their design team is gonna design, do the cost estimates again, and then they're gonna come back to us with a new number again, so right now, where we stand is that we're at, on paper, the $16 million where we
Right.
need to be. They're gonna design again and come back to us again, and then we're gonna VE again, either way, hopefully maybe the other way, but
Right.
who knows? But just to let people know that we do have another opportunity before we take the documents out to referendum, that this is the second time and we have one more time to do it. So we're, I think according to what Chris described to me, we're in pretty good shape, and that's just general,
Right, yeah.
high level right
Yeah,
now.
we're on budget. We still have,
What, I'm
You
sorry.
said
what did I-
referendum, I'm like.
I'm sorry, I meant out to bed. I'm sorry, out to bed.
I saw Jean's face.
I'm sorry, yeah, out to bed. Sorry, Jane.
we have,
That
we
works.
have healthy contingencies built in
Yeah.
as well. There's still 3% in escalation between now and bid time, and 5% in design and estimating contingency. So as we finish our CDs, towards the end of March, beginning of April, at that time, we'll send this back out to the third-party estimator. And as Kathy said, before you go out to bid, we'll get that estimate back, incorporate any value engineering that we believe is needed before this hits the street to general contractors.
And I think one other thing, just as good for people that are listening and on anyone just for the group too, is that even though we've gone through this relatively quickly, but the reasons for the subcommittee, just the process, what Chris had given this information to Russ and the staff, they went through it in detail. Then he gave it to our committee, which was our VE committee. We went through it in a lot of detail too, and now it's to you guys. So I think that's important to note that we went through an entire process, and the people, Russ and Chris, that really went through the ins and outs of it in very big detail. And then our subcommittee also went through it in detail too.
So this just follows up on one more question that we're gonna take another crack at this on line item number 9, Chris, the porticos.
Mhm.
And then to your new renderings here, these two pictures right here. And so we could potentially either be spending less money, the same on one of these renderings.
If we were to go the most economical, it's this one, because
This one is real,
yeah, this currently exists.
Yeah,
on the
right.
east Side of the building,
yeah,
and it's a lot less detailed than this one.
okay,
So in terms of, it's kind of like the most economical, this is, I'm sorry, bumping my microphone so many
Yeah.
times. This one would be slightly more. I don't know that we capture necessarily all 65,000 in VE.
okay,
It might be more like 50,000.
okay, so this is still to be determined.
Yep.
for this. Okay, great.
Couple questions on that. So the portico one, the one that's applied versus the actual canopy,
Right.
I think looks better.
Yeah.
So my questions are, how important are those entrances? Are they used a lot, or are they
Yeah.
not gonna be used a lot?
That's side one.
Their exits.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought. So I would maybe go for what looks good and doesn't protect as much.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Which is more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I thought it would be
Big picture.
less expensive. Demo the top, the awning off the thing and then,
Aim
But-
for that one.
yeah, aim for that one. I think that's a better look personally.
That
Those are the same size columns that are on the original drawings.
I'll verify that.
Yeah, yeah, I think they might-
Mhm.
it's a little thin, just like an inch or two.
Okay. But it was done in the style. We
Yeah,
have,
I think it's.
we have the actual elevations of this, so we
Yeah,
can,
You
you know, get it pretty darn close to what
Yeah.
it was originally. At least
Maybe
in
it was
terms of
than that.
ornamentation.
Yeah.
Yep.
It looks good.
Is this the time to ask?
Yeah, yeah, talk about.
I just have one more question about the gym floor, which I understand what it is, but is that gonna hold up and be appropriate for, you know, we have the youth using it for sure, but we're also thinking about adult ed. Pickleball seems to be the thing and, you know, adult ed exercise programs and different things also.
Yes.
Because that's a good floor
It
for all
is,
of it.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Dan?
Nope, all good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor. We got a second. Ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor, state by saying aye.
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 Any Not opposed, motion carries. G3, I need a motion to accept the design development documents.
So moved.
Second.
And this is just a technical
Yep,
motion.
yeah, just the documents, correct?
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
We already have them.
Yeah, you were provided them.
Yeah.
We reviewed them at the last meeting. This really just kind of closes this design development phase. It says documents are all, you know, we're good with them. The cost estimate is back reconciled at the 16 million. And then this allows Silver Petrozelli to move forward with the construction document.
okay. All those in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. G3. G4, okay, to approve I need a motion to approve the interior design
Motion.
conditions.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the finishes, the interior design?
And
Finishes,
Peter, if I could
yes.
say the same thing
Go
I
ahead.
said with the VE committee is that, just again, even though Chris did go through it relatively quickly, our subcommittee of the finishes did go through it quite a bit in detail, so much in detail that at the beginning, when Chris went through like 3 slides and we were in an hour, we thought when there was 42 more to go, we got a little concerned, but once we got through the hump of it, we really did start moving along. But I guess just for the public to know that our committee did spend a lot of time going through it
Yeah.
in detail with Chris.
Yeah, like I said earlier, a lot of subcommittee work, a lot of staff work has gone into these reports that we're doing now, so some of the committee members here have seen this stuff a lot of times in staff, so.
I do have a
It's go,
question.
and Jean, you can
Miss-
go right ahead.
Thank you. On this motion. Some of the things that came out of the design, the VE meeting affected some of the decisions that we made, the tile and the bathroom, things like that, that I'm assuming we're gonna revisit.
Correct.
Correct.
So we go ahead and accept and then
Yep.
look at it again.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll be doing this again.
okay.
Any more questions on interior? Okay, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Where are we? G5?
Yep.
Okay, I need a motion to review proposals and pricing from Silver Petroselli.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Kathy, you want to pick up on this one? This is the stuff that we did just earlier.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn this over to Kat.
So at our last meeting, we authorized Chris to go out and get some proposals for environmental design. And the thought was, instead of doing an RFP process like we have done for other contracts, this could be something that's incorporated under Silver Petrozelli's contract with us. So Chris has, and I believe we're passing it out now, received a number of proposals and has a recommendation for who he would recommend going with. And this would just be a selection to include in Silver Petrozelli's contract. So I'll hand it over to Chris to just kind of review these a little bit.
So we had reached out to 4 environmental consultants that we've worked with in the past. 3 responded with proposals. And I had a number of back and forths with them to make sure that they all understood the scope the same, that they accounted for similar types of testing and that their fees were being presented in a similar manner so that we could really compare apples to apples. So just hitting the highlights, they all received the previous high school environmental report, so they familiarized themselves with that and knew what had been done. They all approached this as we expected, that they'll need to come out to the building, survey the building, review the materials, review our documents, and do additional testing for asbestos, additional testing for lead, and additional surveying for potential PCBs. So I don't want to get too into the weeds with the PCBs, but this cropped up probably in the last 10 years with the EPA as an environmental hazard, found often in caulks. And the way that the EPA regulated this, people started testing for PCBs, and if you got results above a certain parts per million, the EPA regulations required you to abate the source material. Then you had to come back and test all the adjacent materials that were touching that source material. And if that had PCBs in it, you had to take that out, come back and test until you got a clean slate. So this resulted in the early projects where PCBs were identified in astronomical costs of taking out masonry and wood and stuff that, you might get minute amounts of the PCBs leaching into that are permanently embedded in those materials. So the approach that's been taken more recently is looking at the age of the building and the types of materials and the characteristics of these materials. And if it's believed that PCBs can be in there, the environmental consultants just say, assume it's PCBs, take it out, dispose of it properly, and that results in you not having to come back and test. In the instance of the 1928 building, you won't have to test any of the brick, but I'm almost guaranteeing whichever of these consultants we hired would say, assume that the window caulk has PCBs in it, because that's where we often see it, and abate the windows and the caulk as such. But you won't have to come back and test all the brick, because it's really not a hazard to anybody, and it just results in abnormal costs of coming back potentially to remove brick if any of those materials leached into the masonry. So I just wanted you all to understand that process. And that is typical. I would bet that they did the same thing on the high school. Actually, I can confirm that they did the same thing on the high school, because we have that report where the previous engineer identified likely PCB sources in that building versus actually testing. Each of these consultants also has included provisions for providing cost estimates as part of our next phase, so we can have accurate abatement cost estimates. And they have included a roofer to help with the cores and the sampling of the roofing materials that will need to be repaired after they do that invasive testing. What none of them included was rental of a lift or other means to get up to the roof. In talking with Russ and Kathy and Kat, we believe that the Farmington Fire Department would be able to provide a ladder truck or means of access up to the high shingle roof. And we have an interior stair that we can get up to the flat section of roofs for them to do their testing. So the number of samples varies slightly in the proposals, but the actual sample tests in the grand scheme of these numbers is relatively insignificant. Some of the tests are $15 a test, others might be $30 to $40 a test. So I did look at those different sample numbers you see under the asbestos survey. For instance, Langen Engineering provided 120 PLM samples and 8 point counts. Eagle Environmental provided in their fee 50 and 3. And then I asked Ty and Bond to provide the same 50 plus 5 PLM, which was taking a number that we felt was somewhere in the middle of what we saw from the original 3 proposals. And again, the difference in, for instance, the Ty and Bond and the Langen, the quantity of proposals would result in about $2,000 in total testing based on the number of tests that Langen was proposing, which when we get down to the bottom numbers here for their survey testing and design fees, really wouldn't impact the order or the magnitude of how we're looking at these on a cost comparative analysis. So for the fees for surveying the building, sampling the building, having those tests performed and giving us a report, which includes an estimate, those are the 3 numbers you're seeing. Langen was just under 18,000. I apologize, the numbers are a bit small. Eagle was 13,400 and Ty and Bond was 8,300. Just based on cost, recognizing that these are all capable firms with credentials to perform this work, we would recommend using Ty and Bond as the least of the costs. And we don't feel that there's any drawbacks in that in terms of performance or quantity of samples that you're going to get based on that cost. To that fee, we would add our 10% markup for managing them, coordinating with them. So that total, what I'll call pre-construction fee would be $9,130, which is displayed at the bottom of the page in this summary. Even more confusing than all this are the CA and monitoring fees, where these environmental consultants have to estimate what the quantities of hazardous materials are that they haven't tested yet, and then determine how long it's going to take a contractor to get that out of the building, what other items might be identified during construction that we don't know about, that that the environmental engineer will have to weigh in on, and how long will they need to be out on site during construction, monitoring the contractor to make sure that everything is being done per their specs and per protocols as outlined by the state and Department of the EPA. I apologize. So they all took a stab at it, and these numbers are all estimates, and it's all based on hourly fees. So Langen estimated that they would need to be on site for roughly 10 weeks, which I felt was heavy. Eagle had estimated into that 10 weeks, at a cost of $67,400. Eagle estimated they'd be on site roughly 6 weeks with a cost of $26,250. And Ty and Bond estimated they'd be on site for 4 weeks during construction with a cost of $16,500. I am recommending that we keep the same environmental engineer throughout. I hope that's clear, but I'm recommending that we take a middle ground with this CA and monitoring, that approving Ty and Bond for their survey and testing fee of $8,300, but then to carry a $30,000 CA and monitoring allowance, which again splits the 3 fees, and I think is a safe number that we can project at this time to get us through what needs to be done environmentally during construction.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And for that, we would be looking at additional services to our contract of $39,130. But again, that $30,000 is billed hourly based on the time spent by the environmental engineer during construction.
Question,
Yes,
are the hourly rates, I assume, are different for the different firms? Is that correct?
correct.
Because it seems like Ty gets through 4 weeks
Yeah,
and a lot less than per week.
senior project manager fees for Langen was $200 an hour. And for the other two firms, a senior project manager was right around $125 to $130 an hour, which
Probably the difference right there.
which explains the discrepancy in costs, in addition to Langen had assumed they would be out there longer, but it's not,
Right,
it's not double, it's more than double.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have personal experience with Ty and Bund?
We have not used them from an environmental side in some time, but we do consult with them on civil design and other work that we've done with them, but yeah, to be totally frank, we've worked with them the least of these three.
We've worked with them.
We work with them quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did Parsons, they did the salt shed, they do our dam.
Yeah.
Okay.
For us, they do.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
So that's good to hear.
yeah,
Yeah.
we like them
It's a
quite
high
a bit.
recommendation.
Chris, I'm gonna read what I think the motion should be and tell me if it sounds right. And
Okay.
if someone could do it, it would be to accept the environmental design proposal from Ty and Bond in the amount of $9,130 to be included in SPA's scope of services and to approve a CA monitoring allowance for environmental design not to exceed $30,000. So that's the motion.
There you go. Second, Joe?
Second. Well, first. I'll be a first.
Yeah.
Who wants
Okay.
to second it?
I would,
You
second.
already did.
Jack did.
Okay. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carries. All right, I think now we go into executive session. Need a motion for that.
Motion.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're in executive session at 5:30. And who's in everyone stays?
Yeah, so just a housekeeping. Dan, you should have received a second Zoom link for an executive session Zoom that we will
Oh.
set up now. For the public, the meeting, there's a couple of motions after executive session, so we will continue that Zoom, but separately. We'll be on pause for that one and return to it, but Dan, if you can log off this one and then go on the executive session one. So give us 1 minute to switch these Zooms.
We have 7.
Yep.
All right. We're here.
You hear you?
Good, Dan.
All right, Dan's in.
Okay, we're good, Devin?
All set.
Okay, we are back now in normal session of the 1928 Building Committee at 5:50. And I need now a motion for agenda G7.
I'd like to make the motion to select Innovative Engineering Services as a finalist for commissioning services.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. G7, Joe, can I have the motion for that, please?
G8.
Or G8,
I'd like
sorry.
to make a motion to select Colliers as a finalist for professional engineering review services.
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion on the finalists for the professional engineering? Okay, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Joe, go right into G9.
G9, make a motion to authorize the town manager and professional partnership subcommittee to negotiate and sign contract with selected firms for commissioning services.
Kathy?
Got a second first.
Oh, yeah.
Second.
Second, Kathy.
So as we discussed, on completion of the town's due diligence reference checks, the selected firm will be contacted and a meeting will be coordinated with members of the professional partnership subcommittee to finalize the agreement. Per the general conditions section of the RFP, by submitting a response, the firm agrees and warrants that if it is awarded a contract, they will execute the draft agreement that was provided in the attachment. So it's really not a lot of negotiations because we've already have given them the contract. So, but we do want the professional partnership to meet with us. We'll go over, and especially for both of these, just to go through it in detail. And this is authorizing me to sign it once the professional partnership comes to the agreement.
And you'll follow up with their references.
I will do all that. Yep.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Joe, G10, please.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town manager and the professional partnership subcommittee to negotiate and sign the contract with a selected firm for professional engineering review services.
Need a second?
Second.
And the same thing with this
Next,
group
right.
too.
Yep. Any other questions on this line item? Okay, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Other business, we have any other?
Nope, we
Nope.
don't have any other business. Our next meeting is the February
13.
13th. And just, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. We've done a lot of the heavy lifting right now, and now Chris and the crew are gonna be designing again.
Yep.
So the communication group is gonna need to meet. We want to get a newsletter, but I think for a little bit, it's gonna be a little bit of a lull with the group until we get to the next step of numbers
Right.
for us and design. So just to give you a heads up on that.
I already had on my calendar the 3:30
You did.
communications.
Since we sent it to you already.
And I put it on my calendar.
Gene?
That's
I
the
think it's the 13th, right? 3:30 on the 13th?
Yeah,
13th, right, Dan?
It's on my calendar.
yeah.
Gosh.
Just like that.
Ugh.
I need a motion for adjournment.
Motion. Second.
Okay,
Second.
all right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.